beneath the sleepiest city on earth. There is a hidden arena where masked champions wrestle fear itself every night, while the whole world dreams in deceits. Tonight, I am going to tell you how its greatest championship was won by the smallest person ever to step through the ropes, okay? And I promise you, the ending is not the one you think. So settle in, little dreamer. Pull the blanket up to your chin, let the pillow take the full weight of your head, and let your breathing find its slow evening tide, 'cause this story is long on purpose, and you are allowed to fall asleep anywhere inside it. In fact, in this particular story, falling asleep is not leaving early. You will understand why by the end. Sleepers in this story have the best seats in the house. The story begins in a harbor city called Belhaven, a T, and the first thing everyone says about Belhaven, the thing printed on the postcards and painted on the sign at the edge of town, is that it is the best place in the world to sleep. This is not a boast. It is simply true, and it has been true for 155 years. Travelers with a lifetime of bad nights behind them stop in Belhaven for a single evening and sleep like anchors. Warriors arrive gray and leave rosy. The city's one famous export is rest, and its inns are booked out years in advance by tired people from every corner of the map. And the innkeepers will tell you with a wink that it is the sea air that does it. The salt, they say. The fog, the sound of the harbor bells. The innkeepers are wrong, and most of them know they are wrong, and they wink because winking is easier than explaining. It is not the sea air. Picture the city with me, because we will be spending the whole night here. Belhaven is built on hills around a deep gray harbor, streets of crooked gas lamps and steep stone stairs, chimneys leaning together like neighbors sharing gossip. Fog comes off the water most evenings and moves through the lanes politely. It's like an usher, dimming things down for the night. The lamplighters make their rounds. The harbor bells count the hours in soft bronze voices. By 10 o'clock, the whole city is yawning, and by midnight, it is the quietest place you have ever heard. And at the top of the tallest hill, on a street called Candlewick, stands the oldest building in the city, the Grand Theater Belhaven, all velvet and gilt and dark wood, with a marble entrance and a sign out front that has read, for as long as anyone living can remember, the same two words: sold out. Every night, sold out. No tickets are ever seen changing hands, no crowds are ever seen arriving, and no show has ever been listed on the board. The people of Belhaven have long since stopped wondering about it. It's the way you stop wondering about a picture that is always hung in your grandmother's hallway. The theater is sold out. The sea air makes you sleepy. These are simply facts of the town. But you and I are not the people of Belhaven, little dreamer. We are the audience of this story, and the audience gets to go inside. So come with me, up Candlewick Hill in the fog, past the shuttered bakery and the sleeping cats, to the theater's side door. The small one behind the rain barrel that does not look like anything. It is not locked, has never been locked, because a lock says someone might want in, and the best-kept secrets say nothing at all. Through the door. And we are backstage among the ropes and pulleys and painted scenery of shows that have not been performed in a century. Smell that? Dust and rope and candle wax and old velvet. The smell of kept things. Cross the dark stage where our footsteps make no more sound than falling ash, to the very center where a trapdoor waits, worn smooth at the edges by 155 years of hands. In the story, you may take 900 steps in a single slow breath, and we just did. At the bottom, the stair opens out, and here is the secret at the heart of Belhaven. The reason for the postcards and the rosy travelers and the sign that says sold out. It is an arena, a great round coliseum carved into a vast hollow beneath the city, ringed with rising banks of wooden seats, thousands upon thousands of them climbing up into shadow. Candles burn everywhere, thousands of candles, on wheels and racks and chandeliers of black iron. So the whole hollow glows the warm color of honey. Enormous ropes, woven from the rigging of old ships, hang in swags from the darkness overhead. Banners drift on the underground air, stitched with masks and moons and bells, some of them so old their pictures have softened into suggestions. And at the center of everything, raised on timbers, lit like a small golden island in all that honey-colored dark, stands the ring. You know the shape? Even if you have never watched a single match of anything, a square platform, waist high, with padded posts at the corners and 3 ropes running around the sides, ropes wrapped in faded silk. The canvas that covers it has been mended so many times by so many careful hands that it is more mending than canvas now. A quilt of 155 years of small repairs. This is the midnight ring. It was built in the year 1871 on the ruins of something far older, and it is the reason every person in Belhaven sleeps like an anchor. I will tell you why, and I will tell you slowly, because this is the part of the story where the world opens. And worlds should be open the way you open a window in winter, a little at a time. Every person carries fears. You know this. Small ones, like spiders and Mondays. Middle-sized ones, like deep water and empty mailboxes. And the big, quiet ones underneath, which I will not list, because you have your own list, and it is nobody's business but yours. Most fears stay small, and small fears are fine, okay? Small fear is just a fence, keeping you back from real cliffs, okay? But a fear that is fed too long, fed with attention, fed with silence, fed with 3 into morning ceilings, can grow, okay? And a fear that grows big enough, old enough, heavy enough, stops being a feeling and starts being a thing. It gets a shape. It gets a walk. The keepers of the midnight ring call these grown fears the dreads, and I want you to hold 2 facts about the dreads at once, because both are true, and the whole story lives between them. The first fact is that a dread, fully grown, is a serious matter, big as a bear or a wave or a bad year, and it does what all fears do, which is feed. A city with an unmanaged dread loose in its cellars does not sleep. It tosses. It worries. It sits up at 3 in the morning, every house at once, hearts going like little fists on doors. The second fact is that a dread is not evil. It matters more than anything else I will tell you tonight, so let it settle all the way down. A dread is a fear, and a fear, at its root, is always something that once tried to protect you, grown confused and hungry in the dark. The keepers have known this since the founding. It is written over the arena's great doors in letters of hammered bronze, and I will translate the old words plainly. Nothing down here is a monster. Everything down here forgot it was a fence. Now, you cannot kill a fear. The keepers learned this early, and they learned it hard in the arena's first bad winter, long ago. Strike a dread down, destroy it outright, and it does what fears do when you try to crush them, which you also know from your own 3 in the morning ceilings. It splits, it doubles, it comes back as 2 smaller fears with better hiding places. Destruction is food to them. Fighting fear with force is feeding it protein. But there is one thing, exactly one thing in all the world that makes a fear grow smaller. And the founders of the Midnight Ring discovered it in the strangest, most human place and built this entire arena on it. A fear shrinks when it loses a story. Not a fight, a story. A fear must be given a tale in front of witnesses who believe. A tale in which the fear is mighty, truly mighty. In which it comes within a single heartbeat of winning. And then, at the last possible moment, in front of every watching eye, it falls. It is held down, shoulders to the canvas, for a spoken count of 3. And a bell rings, and the fear, having lost, believably, dramatically, before an audience whose belief it could feel like sunlight, grows small, small enough to sleep, small enough to go back to being a fence. Forever. Nothing is forever, but for a season. Some seasons can be strung together like lanterns, one after another, for 155 years and counting. That is what the Midnight Ring is. It is not a fight club, and it is not a temple, though it has the sweat of one and the candles of the other. It is a storytelling engine. It is the place where the city's fears are taken, one by one, season after season, and lovingly, spectacularly, ceremonially defeated. Which brings us to the seats, and the loveliest secret of the whole hollow. The arena's thousands of seats are empty all day, but the matches are held at midnight, and at midnight the city overhead is asleep. And when a person falls truly asleep, something soft in them, call it the dreaming self, the part of you that wanders while the body is anchored, drifts loose. And in Belhaven, the dreaming selves know where to go. They come down through the hill like light through water. They settle into the seats in their thousands, faint golden figures, lantern soft, flickering gently. Each one a sleeping citizen of the city above. The grocer, dreaming, is in row 40. The harbor master is in the balcony. The children float down in their nightgowns and take the front rows, always the front rows, and nobody has ever had the heart to move them. That is why the theater is sold out every night. That is the audience. The matches of the Midnight Ring are performed for the sleeping, witnessed by the dreaming. And this is not a flaw in the design, little dreamer. It is the design. Because the belief of a dreaming person is the purest belief there is, awake. We doubt everything, ourselves, most of all, asleep. We believe completely. Anyone who has ever fled a dream monster or flown a dream sky, the sleeping audience of the Midnight Ring believes every match with their whole drifting hearts, and their belief is the current that runs the entire engine. Sleepers have the best seats in the house. I told you that at the beginning, and now you know it was not just a kindness. You should see one match before we meet our hero. Just one, from the cheap seats, high up in the honey-colored dark. It is midnight. The seats below us are filling with golden light, thousands of dreamers settling in with the sound of a very soft tide. Come sit, far below. A door opens under the banners, and the arena fills with the low, rolling sound of a drum, slow as a heartbeat, and down the long ramp toward the ring comes tonight's champion. He is called the Harbor Saint. He is a wide, weathered man in oilskin blues, and his mask, this is the first mask of the story, so look closely, is woven, not carved. Woven of dark blue cords, like a fisherman's net, drawn close over the face, with openings for the eyes and a fringe of small bronze bells along the jaw that make the faintest chiming as he walks. Every mask in the Midnight Ring is woven, and we will learn what they are woven from later tonight, 'cause it is one of the best things in the story, and I am saving it. The Harbor Saint walks the ramp slowly, unhurried, nodding to the front rows. And the dreaming children lean out of their seats toward him like flowers toward a window. He climbs the steps. He ducks between the second and third ropes with a fisherman's economy, and he stands in his corner, rolling his shoulders, while the drum settles and the candles seem to lean in, and the whole hollow holds its breath. Then the far door opens, and the deep water comes in. I will describe it carefully, because I promised you at the start of all our nights together that nothing in these stories would ever startle you, and I keep my promises. The deep water is a dread, the grown fear of dark water and what might be under it, and it enters as a slow, rolling mass of blue-black, like a wave that learned to walk, taller than the ring posts, glinting here and there with the cold sparks of imagined things beneath imagined surfaces. It is genuinely impressive. The dreaming audience makes a sound like a long swell against a harbor wall. Somewhere in the third row, a small golden dreamer grabs the arm of the golden dreamer next to her. But watch the Harbor Saint. He is not afraid. He watches the deep water come down the ramp the way a captain watches weather, with respect, with attention, and with something underneath both that you would swear, from up here in the cheap seats, was fondness. The bell rings once, bright and clean, and the match begins. And here is the shape of it. The shape you must remember, because every true match in the midnight ring has kept this shape for 155 years. For the first long while, the dread wins. The deep water is everywhere, sweeps the saint off his feet like a spring tide. It pours over him, and the candles got her, and the whole ring goes the color of 5 fathoms down, slips him and drops him, and the timbers boom, and the dreaming audience gasps and grips its armrests. The saint fights back, and his fighting matters. He hauls at the great wave with holds that have names, old names. We will learn them, but for every rally he makes, the water rolls back twice as strong. It goes on. It goes almost too long. That is part of the shape. It has to go almost too long. And then comes the moment the keepers call the heartbeat. It's a single beat where the dread has all but won. The saint is down. The water is cresting over him like the end of all swimmers. The arena is one held breath, and even you, up here, knowing it is a story. Feel your chest go tight, and in that heartbeat, the harper saint finds one more thing. Not strength, exactly. Something older than strength. He gets a knee under himself. He gets a grip on the wave itself, which should be impossible. And the audience's belief that it is possible comes pouring down out of the seats like warm rain, and he rises, and the candles rise with him, and he turns the whole cresting mass of the deep water over his shoulder in a long, slow arc. The great throw the keepers call the turning of the tide, and the wave comes down on its back in the center of the ring with a boom like surf on stone, and the harbor saint covers it, chest to churning chest, and the referee, a small, quick person in gray we have not had time to properly meet, drops to the canvas, and the whole arena, thousands of golden dreamers and one weathered fisherman, and every candle in the hollow counts together. 1, 2, 3. The bell rings, and the deep water grows small. It happens gently, like a tide going out, like a bath draining. It's a great blue-black mass folding down and down into itself, until what rocks on the canvas is a puddle no bigger than a sleeping cat, glinting peacefully. The harper saint picks it up. I am not embellishing. He gathers the small, defeated fear of deep water into his cupped hands like something rescued from a storm drain, and he carries it up the ramp, and the dreaming children in the front row reach out and pat it as it passes, and it lets them, above your head, in the city, at that exact moment, 1,000 sleepers who had ever feared dark waterside in their sleep, all together, and sank 1 fathom deeper into rest. That is a match in the midnight ring. That is what the sea air does. Now breathe with me before we go find our hero, because he is down there right now, okay? And he is 11 years old, and he is holding a broom. In, slowly, through the nose, and picture the seats full of golden light. Out longer, through the mouth, and know this one thing as you soften into the mattress. Somewhere, every night, in the hollow places of the world, your fears are being told a story in which they lose. It has been going on your whole life. You did not have to attend a single time. You only had to sleep, which is, in Belhaven and everywhere else, a way of attending. The candles are trimmed. The next match is soon. And a boy with a broom is sweeping the ramp, keeping perfectly to the shadows, mouthing every move of the match he just watched through the gap in the curtain. The way he has watched every match, every night, for his whole remembered life. Let me tell you about Finch. Every great arena runs on 2 kinds of people. There are the ones the candles are pointed at, the champions in their woven masks, the names on the banners, bananas, and there is the crew. The crew of the midnight ring lives in the understage, the warren of workshops and bunk rooms and kitchens carved into the rock behind the arena walls. And they are the reason anything happens at all. They rig the candle wheels and splice the great ropes. Okay? They mend the canvas, patch by patch, adding their stitches to 155 years of stitches. Okay? They mix the rosin, mine the drum, polish the bell. Crew families have worked the understage for generations, and they have a saying stitched on a sampler in the main kitchen that tells you everything about them. The audience dreams, the champions dance, the crew keeps the floor. Finch was crew. Finch was, in fact, the smallest and youngest member of the entire crew, 11 years old, thin as a rope end, with a cowlick that no amount of water had ever defeated, and his official duties were three. He swept the ring, the ramp, and the aisles. He trimmed the 900 candles of the lower racks, which he could name individually, and did, quietly, on his rounds. And he stayed out of the way. It was the third duty he was best at. Finch could be in a room the way a shadow is in a room. He knew every gap in every curtain, every sightline from every shadowed doorway, every spot in the whole hollow from which a small person could watch the ring without being seen, and watch he did. Finch had watched, by his own count, which was careful, 2,940 matches of the Midnight Ring, which was every single match held there since he was 4 years old. He knew them all by heart, not remembered. Knew the way you know stares in the dark. Ask him, and he could tell you how the knowing worry was pinned in the autumn 3 years back. Every hold in order, and how that match differed from the worry's match the spring before. And why the difference mattered, and which candle guttered at the heartbeat moment, because he had been trimming it that night, and his hand had stopped in the air. Nobody asked him, of course. He was the broom boy. But you should always keep an eye, in stories and in life, on the quiet ones at the edge of the room who are counting everything. They are never only counting. Now, I must tell you how Finch came to live in the understage, and this is the sad part of the story. So, I will hold your hand through it, and I promise it is the kind of sad that this story was built to mend. Finch's mother, he never knew. She was a rigger crew-born, and she died of a winter fever before he could walk. And the crew, in the way of crews, simply closed around the gap and raised her son among the rope smell and the kitchen warmth, 40 parents deep. That grief was old and soft, a worn coin he carried without weight. His father was another matter. His father was the gray gallant. Even now, 11 years after, you could stop the oldest keeper in the deepest workshop and say that name and watch their hands go still. The gray gallant was the greatest champion in the history of the Midnight Ring. Not the strongest, they will tell you, and not the quickest. The truest. His mask lineage ran unbroken back to the founding itself. In 1871, a plain gray mask, woven and rewoven down 5 generations of keepers. And when he wore it, the match did not look like a performance and did not look like a battle. It looked like the truth happening in front of you at midnight in a ring of candlelight. The crew loved him because he had been born crew in the understage and never once forgot the floor. The champions loved him because he made everyone in the ring with him better, and the dreads, the old keepers say this quietly, and only after the younger ones have gone to bed. The dreads loved him too, in their hungry, confused way. Finch was not yet 1 year old on the night of the last match. It's everything he knew of it. He knew the way we know it, from the telling. And the telling goes like this. 11 years ago, in the worst sleepless autumn anyone could remember, when the whole city tossed and the arena's candles burned strangely, a dread rose out of the deepest galleries beneath the ring that had never risen before. The oldest one, the one the founding year ledgers mentioned only once, in the margin, in a hand that shook. The wakeful. Every other dread is the fear of something. Water, worry, the empty chair. The wakeful is the fear of never resting. The fear that closing your eyes is dangerous. It's the fear that stalks the 3 in the morning sealing itself. And the keepers, reading their trembling margin note, understood the terrible joke at the center of it. The entire engine of the Midnight Ring runs on a sleeping, dreaming, believing audience. And here was a fear whose whole nature was to keep audiences awake. The gray gallant took the match. Of course he did. He kissed his infant son, who was teething in the head rigger's arms, left his gray mask's spare threads on his workbench, and walked down the ramp to the ring, while the seats above him flickered and thinned. The city's dreamers, coming unstitched from sleep, even as they tried to settle. And here the telling stops, because nobody agrees on what happened next, for one simple, impossible reason. There is no ending. The match of the Grey Gallant and the Wakeful is the only match in 155 years with no recorded finish. The ledger for that night, kept in the referee's own hand, describes the entrance, the opening holds, the terrible beauty of the early going, and then simply stops mid-line with a small blot where the pen rested too long. The witnesses, and there were few, for the audience was thin and guttering that night, remember the match going long and long and longer, deep past any match before it, and then remember, each of them, the same senseless thing. They remember falling asleep. All of them, at once, gone, not defeated. There was no small folded dread and no torn gray mask, not victorious, for no bell had rung. The bell, in the old keeper's touch, would, when they say this, the bell never rang. The greatest champion of the age walked down the ramp, through the ropes, into the truth, and was never seen again. And the match, as far as any ledger in the building is concerned, is still going on. They searched, you can be sure. They searched the galleries and the deep stairs for a year. The city slept badly for a season, then strangely well, then normally, and life, which is a current, carried everyone forward. The Wakeful did not rise again. The Grey Mask's lineage was declared dormant, its spare threads locked in the trophy vaults. The champion's son grew up in the understage kitchens, 40 parents deep, with the cowlick and the broom. You know the wound, so now you can understand the boy. Finch did not remember his father, and this, if you have ever known a child in his position, you will recognize, made the missing larger, not smaller. You cannot grieve a memory you do not have. You can only orbit the place where it should be. In Finch's orbit was the arena itself. It was offered other lives. You should know that. Crew Cousins topside would have taken him. There was schooling in the city, sunlight, a normal boyhood on the hills. He declined, at 6, at 8, at 10, with the same polite, immovable sentence which the kitchen still quotes. He said he would stay, thank you, because this was the last place the story stopped. The last place the story stopped, 6 years old, when he first said it. The kitchen ladies cried into the soup. So he stayed and swept and trimmed his 900 candles and watched 2,940 matches through the gaps in the curtains and learned, without anyone teaching him, without anyone even noticing, the entire art of the midnight ring from the outside in. And every night, when the last candle was cold, he did the thing nobody knew about. The thing I can tell you, because storytellers see everything. He walked to the edge of the dark ring, put one hand flat on the old mended canvas, the way you would touch the shoulder of someone sleeping, and stood there a moment, listening. If you had asked him what he was listening for, he could not have told you. He was 11. But you and I, up here in the cheap seats of the story, can name it. He was listening for the count, somewhere in the boy's bones, in the place below, explaining he had never once believed the match was over. And, little dreamer, I will tell you now what the whole rest of this night will prove. The boy's bones were right. Breathe with me here, before the mask finds him, because in the next part of the story, everything begins to move, okay? And this is the last fully quiet moment, so let us use it properly, okay? In slow, 4 counts, and think of the boy with his hand on the canvas in the dark, okay? Out, slower, 6 counts, and think of everyone who has ever kept a light on for a story that stopped too soon. That is not foolishness. The keepers have a word for it, and the word is faith, and this story is on its side. The candles are cold. The boy is asleep in his bunk. third from the door, nearest the kitchen warmth, and, down in the trophy vaults, in a locked drawer, something made of gray thread has just, very quietly, begun to hum. It was spring cleaning that did it. It is almost always something ordinary. The great turnings of a life arrive disguised as chores, and the 11th spring of Finch's life was the spring they finally got around to the retired ropes. Understand, the great ring ropes, woven from ship's rigging, last about 30 years. There were 5 generations of retired ropes in the lofts. Nobody had touched the oldest coils in decades. Finch, being smallest, was sent up into the loft tops, where the old ropes lay under canvas shrouds, to sweep and tag and report. And it was there, on the 9th day of cleaning, inside the 3rd coil of a rope retired some 20 years before, that his broom handle knocked against something that was not rope. Someone, 20-odd years ago, had unlaid the great cable, hidden a small bundle in its heart, and rewoven the strands around it, a splice so fine that 4 inspections had missed it. Crew work. Master crew work. Finch worked the bundle loose with the rope's pliers' fingers, and unwrapped the oilcloth, and sat down very suddenly on the loft boards, because, lying in his hands, soft and gray and impossibly there, was his father's mask. Not the spare threads from the vault drawer. The mask. The gray mask of the founding lineage, whole, unworn, smelling faintly of candle smoke and of something underneath that the boy had no memory to name, but his body seemed to, 'cause his eyes went hot without his permission. I told you, the masks of the midnight ring are woven, not carved. Here is what they are woven from. They are woven from kept promises. I mean this as plainly as I can say it. A thread of proof, fine as spider silk, strong past all sense. The mask weavers of the Valewood Way know how to draw these threads and spin them, and a champion's mask is nothing more and nothing less than the fabric of every kept promise of their lineage. Generations of I will and I did, woven over the face like a net over a fisherman. That is why a mask in this story never hides a keeper. It cannot. You cannot hide behind your own kept promises. They are the truest thing about you. A mask in the midnight ring reveals. It says to the dread across the ring, here is exactly who you were dealing with. 5 generations deep, and dreads, who live on doubt, find nothing to eat on such a face. And a mask remembers. The threads know the hands that kept them, waking in the hands of an 11-year-old broom boy with his father's cowlick. Did the thing that masks do, perhaps once in a century. It sang. Not a song with a tune you could carry, single low note, felt more than heard. The sound a great rope makes when a weight it has waited for finally takes hold, and the note rolled down out of the loft tops, through the rigging, across the empty, honey-colored hollow, and every keeper and crew member in the understage stopped, mid-stitch, mid-sentence, and looked up. They found him still sitting in the loft, the mask in his lap, both of them humming. What followed fast. There was a council, of course, that same night, in the long room behind the arena wall. Every senior keeper and crew chief at the ancient table, and the gray mask lying in the middle of it on a folded cloth. And Finch, standing at the foot of the table in his sweeping clothes with his heart going like the drum. There was argument. You would not have wanted a council that did not argue. He is a child, said some, and they were right. The lineage is dormant, said others, and the ledgers agreed. He has never trained a day, said the trainers, and no one could dispute it. And then the oldest voice at the table, a voice we will come to love in the next act. A voice like a mountain, deciding to be kind, pointed out the one fact that outranked every other fact in the room. The mask had sung. A mask woven from 5 generations of kept promises had waited 20 years in the dark heart of a rope, and passed over every champion in the building, and sung for the broom boy. The masks of the midnight ring do not awe. They are made of the only substance in the world that cannot lie. A boy cannot refuse a mask, said the old voice, but a mask can wait for a boy to be ready. And so, the ruling of the council, entered in the ledger that night in the year of our story, was this: the gray lineage was dormant no longer. The mask would be kept in trust, and the broom boy Finch, 11 years old, smallest of the crew, would go down one more staircase. Because the arena, little dreamer, has an understage. And the understage, as only the keepers know, has an understage of its own. And in it, since the founding, there has been a school. Breathe here, again, slow, and feel what the boy felt walking back to his bunk that night, which was not triumph, and was not fear, but was the particular trembling lightness of a person whose life has just changed shape while their hands still smell of soap. Out, slower. Every one of us has inherited something we felt too small for: a name, a duty, a hope, a house, a grief. And every keeper in 155 years, walking down that last staircase for the first time, felt exactly what you felt, and exactly what Finch felt, and went down the stairs anyway, one small step at a time, which is the only way stairs have ever been descended. The mask is in its case, humming to itself like a kettle on low. The boy is packing a small bag, mostly socks, and below the below, in candlelit halls, cut from the roots of the hill, where teachers are setting out chairs. The school beneath the understage has no name on any door, because everyone who belongs there already knows where they are. But the students have called it the Candleworks for at least a century, and the name fits. It is a warren of round training halls, and low libraries, and warm kitchens, carved from the deep stone, lit by candle wheels, and lined with 155 years of class portraits, masked faces in rows, going back and back. And if you walk the portrait hall slowly, as new students always do on their first night, you will find a plain gray mask appearing in them at intervals, generation like a note repeating in a long song. Finch walked that hall on his first night, and stopped at the newest gray portrait. He's 20-some years old, and stood there a while, and no one hurried him. The Candleworks is never in a hurry. IA has one rule about time, posted nowhere and known by everyone. The ring has been kept for 155 years, and it will not fall down while you learn. There were 11 other students that year, and 4 teachers, and the teachers, as promised, deserve their portraits. So let me paint them for you one at a time, slowly, the way the candles do. The skyward way, the way of the flyers, was taught by a tiny ancient woman called the Wren, who was somewhere between 70 and weather, and who moved along the tops of the ring ropes the way you and I moved along sidewalks. The skyward way is the way of hope and spectacle, of leaps that should not be possible, and are. And its whole philosophy fits in the sentence the Wren opened every class with, said while standing casually on a turnbuckle. The audience believes higher than you jump, she would say, so jump, and their belief will hold the difference. The veilward way, the way of the mask weavers, was taught by a soft-spoken, long-fingered man called Master Solace, who was rarely quite where you thought he was standing, and whose classroom was hung with 10,000 spools of promised red, glinting like a night sky indoors. The veilward way is craft and misdirection, the art of showing a dread exactly what the story needs it to see. Its philosophy is the gentlest paradox in the school. We deceive nothing, Master Solace would murmur, threading a needle by candlelight. We rehearse the truth until the truth can perform. The bell-voice way, the way of the callers, was taught by a mountain-sized, thunder-laughed man called Brother Bellows, whose voice, when he opened it fully, made the candle flames all lean the same direction. The bell-voice way is the way of the spoken word, and it holds the school's most dangerous gift, which Brother Bellows introduced to every new class with the same demonstration. He would whisper the true name of a small fear, just a mouse of a fear, conjured for the lesson, and the class would watch it shrink by half at the sound of itself. A fear truly named, he would rumble, loses half its size, because half of every fear is the not naming. Then he would hold up one enormous finger. And a fear named wrongly, or named cruelly, doubles. This is why we trained the voice for years before we licensed the word. In the stone-writ way, the way of the grapplers, was taught by the oldest voice from the council table, the mountain that had decided to be kind. And her name was Mother Halloran, and you should fix her in your heart right now. Because this story loves her, and will need you too. Mother Halloran was in her 70s, built like the harbor wall, gray hair in a rigorous braid, hands that had held everything the world had so far offered to be held. She had been, in her day, one half of the most decorated tag partnership in the ledgers. And if you have been paying the kind of attention the quiet ones at the edge of rooms pay, you have already guessed the other half, and you are right, and we will come to it. Stone-writ way is the way of patience and endurance, of anchoring, of holding on. It's philosophy she gave the class on the first morning, seated on the ring apron with her hands folded, in a voice like slow water. Everything in the world will tell you the match is decided by the spectacular moment, she said. It is not. It is decided by who is still holding on when the spectacular moment arrives. We are the way of still holding on. Finch wrote that down. He wrote everything down. He had a ledger of his own now, crew habit, and he filled it the way gutters fill in autumn. And the training. Oh, the training. I could spend the whole rest of the night in the cozy montage of that first year, okay? And I will spend some of it, because bedtime stories are allowed to linger where it is warm. He learned the holds, and the holds of the midnight ring have names like old prayers, and knowing them is half of loving this world. The anchor, the foundational hold of the stone-writ way, which is simply the art of becoming too rooted to move, in which Mother Halloran taught by having students hold it while she recited the entire founding charter twice. The long patience, a gentle pinning rap that does not hurt and cannot be escaped, and has ended more matches than any throw in the ledgers. The lantern lift, the great throw, the crowds love best, in which a keeper takes the whole weight of a dread up over their heart, holds it there one impossible candlelit second, and brings it over, in which the teachers describe, always, in the same 7 words, the lifting of a heavy thing into light. He learned rope running from the wren, badly at first, then less badly. The ropes teaching him what they teach everyone, that falling is a curriculum, not a verdict. He learned from Master Solace how to listen to his mask, though he was not yet permitted to wear it. 1 hour a week, the gray mask on a table between them, humming, from the boy learning to tell its moods the way you learn a grandparent's silences. And he learned entrance craft, which surprised him, because he had assumed the walk down the ramp was just a walk. It is not. An entrance is a promise made with your feet, Brother Bellows taught, pacing the ramp with the whole class in step behind him like enormous ducklings. Every step tells the audience and the dread alike who is arriving and what they may rely on. A champion's entrance says, before a single hold is taken, I have come on purpose, and I will still be here at the count of 3. Now, the classmates, because a school is its people, and 3 of them matter to our story. There was Juniper, of the skyward temperament from the day she arrived, a rooftop runner's daughter from the city above, fearless to the point of needing supervision, who took to Finch on the first day with the direct announcement that he was the smallest thing she had ever seen enter a ring, and she intended to see him thrown from the top rope by springtime. She meant it kindly. Everything Juniper meant, she meant kindly, at speed. There was Ox, a stone-ripped boy from a quarry family, 12 years old and the size of a door, who spoke perhaps 40 words a week and stood, without ever being asked, wherever the smallest people in the room happened to be, the way harbor walls stand where the boats are. And there was Pip, a Belvoir student, who stammered, everywhere, at meals, in halls, in his sleep, the words snagging like wool on nails. Everywhere, that is, except inside the ropes. The first time the class heard Pip call a practice match, heard that snagging voice open into something clear and ringing and sure, the moment his hand touched the ring apron, nobody said anything, because some things you do not point at. But Finch wrote it in his ledger that night and underlined it. The ring makes room for the true voice. Remember this. He was too small for the stone it holds, his anchor draggable by any second ear. Too earthbound for the skyward, his top rope work honest but heavy. Too plainly honest for the veilward, his feints readable. Master Solace said gently, like large print. Week after week, the smallest student, son of the greatest keeper, heir to the singing mask, was mediocre at everything. And if you have ever been 11 and mediocre at everything while carrying a famous name, you know exactly the specific gravity of that. And so did the teachers, who said nothing and watched. The turn came in midwinter, and it came as Finch's turns always came, through the gap in a curtain. There was a night the senior students fought their assessment matches against small Q's licensed dreads, and the Candleworks gathered to watch, and the match caller took ill an hour before, throat closed by winter. A match in the midnight ring, even a school match, must be called. The story spoken aloud, as it happens, for the audience's belief, to have a rail to run on. Brother Bellows scanned the hall for a substitute, and his eye passed over the front rows of eager seniors, and landed, with the deliberateness of a docking ship, on the small first year in the back, who had watched 2,940 matches through curtain gaps and wrote everything down. Finch called the match. And, little dreamer, the room went still the way the loft tops had gone still, because the boy knew. He knew every hold before it was taken, knew the shape under the shape, knew that this senior's anchor echoed a champion's anchor from 9 years ago, and said so. Wove it in, gave the match its ancestors, gave every move its meaning, and the audience's belief. Riding his voice, poured into the ring in a current the seniors later swore they could feel through the canvas, lifting the whole match a full size larger than it was. He was not loud. He never became loud. He simply told the truth of what was happening, one heartbeat ahead of it happening, in the voice of someone who had loved this ring since before he could talk. When it was over, Brother Bellows sat down next to the boy, said nothing for a while in the way of large men moved, and then rumbled the sentence that resorted Finch's life. You have been calling matches to yourself for 7 years, son. Simply had not turned you up. So Finch's way was the bell voice, and his last half year at the Candleworks was the happy montage I promised. The boy finally in his right classroom, learning the deep art, learning that a call is a kind of weaving, learning the licensing rules of the name, the gift, and the danger. A fear truly named loses half its size. A fear named wrongly doubles, and only a keeper who knows a fear all the way to the root may risk its name aloud. Learning from Mother Halloran. In the evening classes she taught by the stove, the history, the founding in 1871, the first bad winter, the writing of the ring law. Never break the script in anger. Never unmask another keeper. Never seek to destroy a dread. And the pen must be earned in story, for shortcuts do not hold. Which is where I have to tell you about the day Finch learned about the script, 'cause I've been keeping it from you the way it was kept from him, and neither of us can go another act without it. It was spring again. Senior, named Tam, was to face the gnawing worry in his graduation match, in the great ring, before the true, dreaming audience. And Finch, as a distinction, was assigned to assist the corner. And so it was that Finch, for the first time, attended a rehearsal. He stood in the training hall doorway and watched Tam in the gnawing worry. Dread, the size of a cart horse, made of teeth and Tuesday deadlines, walked through their match together, quietly, cooperatively. The worry practicing its terrifying second act surge while Tam offered notes. The near loss, choreographed to the heartbeat, its final lantern lift rehearsed at half speed. The worry helpfully jumping a little to aid the lift. The way, though Finch did not yet know the word for it. Dance partners do. The floor did not open under Finch, but everything else did. 2,940 matches. Harbor Saint in the deep water. The turning of the tide. His father's legend. All of it rehearsed. All of it planned. All of it. And the word arrived in him with its full 11-year-old weight. Fake. He did not shout. Crew children do not shout in training halls. He walked, white-faced and very fast, through the warren, down the stove-warm corridor, and did the thing every soul in the candleworks eventually does with the splinter it cannot pull alone. He went to Mother Halloran, and Mother Halloran, who had been waiting for this visit since the masks sang, who had had this conversation with 40 years of students, and once, long ago, been the student, having it, put down her mending, poured 2 mugs of the kitchen's spiced milk, pointed at the other chair, and gave him the truth that this entire story is built around. I will give it to you, as she gave it to him, slowly, by stovelight, K, and you may lie back and take it in with your eyes closed, because it is the thesis of the night, and it is coming to tuck you in. Yes, she said, the matches are planned, every match, since the founding. The dreads know, the keepers know. The script is the whole secret and the whole point, and here is why, and I will not soften it, 'cause you are crew, and crew get the truth. You cannot defeat a fear, she said. Not really, not with strength. Strength against fear is water on a grease fire. What a fear needs, the only thing that has ever made a fear grow small since the beginning of the world, is a story about itself that ends. Fears are unfinished things. That is all they are when you get down under the teeth of them. Worries with no last page. And an unfinished thing will grind on forever, getting bigger, unless someone gives it what every unfinished thing secretly longs for, which is an ending. So we give them endings, she said. We build each fear a story in which it is magnificent, because it needs to be believed to be finished, and no one believes in a weak monster. We let it rise. We let it come within 1 heartbeat of winning. That is the medicine in the bottle. The near loss is the moment the audience's own chests go tight, because the audience must feel the fear truly, or the belief is water. And then we finish it, cleanly, kindly, shoulders to the canvas. 1, 2, 3, the bell. An ending witnessed and believed by thousands. And the fear, finished, finally finished, goes small and goes to sleep. You have seen 10,000 of our audience sigh at the count. That sigh is the sound a story makes when it closes. Is it a trick, then? The boy asked, and his voice cracked on it. Is any of it real? And Mother Halloran leaned forward, and this is the part to keep, little dreamer. This is the part the whole night has been walking toward. Every planned thing in that ring is in service of the only unplanned thing, she said, which is the belief. The belief is real. The courage it takes to stand in front of a cart horse of teeth, script or no script, is real, and I will show you the scars. The rest the audience gets is real. The city sleeping like anchors for 155 years is real. Or we rehearse, child, the way the tide rehearses every day the same shape, and no one calls the tide a liar, okay? We are not pretending the fears are defeated. We are how the fears are defeated, okay? The script is not the opposite of the truth. It is the ceremony the truth arrives in. And then she told him the last thing, the thing he did not understand that night and would understand completely before the end, and so will you. In this whole hollow, she said, the champions are not the bravest ones. The bravest role in the midnight ring, the holiest role, the role we only give to the greatest hearts we have, is not the one who wins. Hi, it is the one who takes the fall. Hi, to lose on purpose, beautifully, believably, so that the story can work. To lay your own shoulders on the canvas for the count, so that something else can be finished. That is the summit of this art. Your father, she said, and stopped, and looked into the stove for a long moment, and said only, Your father was the best there has ever been at that. Drink your milk. Finch drank his milk. He wrote nothing in his ledger that night, which was how the ledger marked its largest entries. And far below the stove-warm corridor, in the deep galleries where the candlelight has never reached, something that had been still for 11 years shifted its weight very slightly, the way a held thing tests a hold. And up in the school, 3 candles went out. Breathe with me. In. 4 counts. The stove ticking, the milk warm. Out. 6. And let Mother Halloran's stone water voice settle into the mattress with you. The script is not the opposite of the truth. The tide rehearses. Somewhere in your own deep galleries, the fears you brought to bed tonight are unfinished stories. That is all. Worries with no last page. The last pages are what this ring is for. The keepers are on shift. The audience is assembling. The candles that went out are being investigated. The story is about to descend. But you do not have to descend with it, little dreamer. That is the beauty of the cheap seats. You can stay up here, warm, half dreaming, and let the story go down for you. It knows the way. It has been down before.